All right, the last part of lesson number 1 is about generating executable files in Python. So remember that whenever we type a Python code, we generate a file with a .py extension, and this is all ASCII text in English letters. And we need an interpreter to execute that file. So the interpreter translates it in runtime into machine code and then give you the result. And so it's slow. So why would you need to convert in executables? So some of the reasons is, one of the reasons is for efficiency reasons, okay? So that it runs really fast. If you convert it into executable file, as we saw earlier, that it consists of all machine language or binary code. So there's no need to translate. It's already translated, and so it's going to run really fast, much faster. So the bigger the code is, the more complicated the code is, the more obvious the difference between the speed of the Python file and the executable file. In our case, we are running just TOI programs consisting of few print statements. It's not going to make it that difference. All right. The other reason is for the convenience of distribution, because if you've written a really nice, useful program in Python, and your friend needs it, or a few other people need it, and they may not be programmers, so they may not have Python environment installed on their machine, and they may not know how to do all of those things. So in that case, you may want to convert it into an executable file and just hand it over to them and say, hey, this is a really cool app that I wrote. It can solve your problem. And they're going to go copy it into their drive and just double click on it, and it's going to run, or type it into the command line, the name of that executable, and it's going to start running, and they will input their data, and it's going to give them output and solve their problem. So there are several packages packages in Python for converting a .py file or a number of .py files, because your project can contain one or more py or Python files in there. So there are several packages for converting your Python files into an executable file. We will be using the py installer, the PyInstaller package. It's convenient to use, and it's a popular package as well. All right. So before we use it, we need to download and install it, and we're going to use our friend pip for that. So I'm going to go over here, click on the terminal, and then call pip install py installer and hit enter. And there you go. It started working already and successfully installed. That's good. Cool. Okay, but the only thing is, even though we installed it as a package, we're not going to be using it from within Python. We're going to be using it from our command line prompt. Okay. And all right. So let's use it on our test folder or test file. So here is the test code that we wrote earlier and saved in test.py file. A bunch of print statements and some numbers, some variables with a number, and then we just printed out that variable. So I'm going to go to there you go. Okay. All right. Okay. So there it is. So we need to make sure that we are in that same path or same folder where the test.py file is. So whenever we open, the good thing about the terminal is whenever we open the terminal, it always opens up in that same folder where the project folder where the py file is, and we can check it out further, be sure about it by typing the dir command, which lists all the files and folders in that particular path. So dir shows me that yes, and confirms me that yes, test.py is in there. So all I need to do now is type in py installer, and I'm going to add some flags or switches to it. So --1 file, and followed by the name of my Python file, which is test.py. So anything that begins with a hyphen or a couple of hyphens is usually called a flag or a switch, and it's basically an option given to this command or program, PyInstaller, to tell it to do something special. In this case, I want my executable to be just a single file. I don't want a bunch of files. All right, so I'm forcing it to generate just one file out of it. So it's going to take one file, test.py, and generate just one file, which is test.exe. So I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to start churning and grinding, and all the machines are going, and see what it comes up with. All right, so it's done, and it says completed successfully. So that's good. If you go back to our file explorer, you see that it has added a couple of directories there, and particularly we are interested in the distribution directory, dist. If you double click on it, there is a single test.exe file. So we need to run it, and it doesn't run really well from within the PyCharm terminal. So we're gonna go into the Windows terminal, which is cmd command prompt. I need to make sure that I am in that same path where that is, where that test.exe is. So I'm going to copy the path here, right click and copy, and then what I want to do is I want to move to the E drive, because this is the E drive, and in here I'm going to do write a command called cd, which stands for change directory, and I'm going to give the whole path that I just copied, but it has to be within the double quotes, like that, and then hit enter, and it takes me over there. Just to make sure I am there, I'm going to type the dir command, which will list all the files and folders in there, and for sure I do see test.exe file there. All I need to do is just type in test and hit enter, and there you go. Yep, it prints out all 5 print statements and then the final number which it calculates. So if you just gonna go back again, right, keep it over here. So all the 5 statements and then some calculations, and then it spits out a number. All 5 statements and then a number. It works fine, right? So let me do it again and again. So if you notice, there's a slight delay between when I hit enter and when that messages start appearing. Slight delay. And the reason for that delay is, let's look at the file. If I highlight that file, its size is 6.58 megabyte, too large for such a small thing that just spits out few print messages. It's too large a file. What happens is that printing, even though this is just a very small code, very small stupid code, doesn't do much other than printing out some statements, it does require a lot of other code to get it to run. So what PyInstaller did was, actually, because I forced it to generate a single file only, it generated a compressed file. So this test.exe is not really a single file. It's actually a compressed or zipped file that consists of so many other files in there. So when I type in the test on the command prompt, it actually in a temporary folder unzips it or decompresses it, pulls out the other files in there, and among those other supporting files, there are so many supporting files, and among those there is a real test.exe there, and then it runs it. So it takes a moment of time to unpack itself and run it, so there's a little delay in there. Okay, if I double click on it, once again, a command box pops up and then goes away. What happens is that this is not a GUI program, so there is no window that's going to come up or a dialog box or menu. There is no GUI elements there. All it does is runs on a command prompt, prints out a message, and then just finishes up. So as soon as this program finishes up, the command box also disappears. So we need to execute it from the command prompt. All right, so the other thing we can do is not to force it to generate a single file. Let it generate a number of files. So PyInstaller, and then just type test.py. So I did not supply one file switch this time. I'm allowing PyInstaller to generate as many files as it likes, and just hit enter, and started working, and then finished up successfully. So let's go back there. Go back to the distribution folder, and it actually generated a whole folder this time called test. And this folder, if you double click in there, it has a bunch of other files, 21 different files in there. These are all supporting files, and one of them is test.exe, which is the real executable in this case. It's not a compressed one. And if I click on there, the size is actually 1.98 as opposed to 6.5 or something. All right. So in this case, what you would need to do is supply this whole folder to your friend. Your friend is going to go and copy this folder onto their hard drive or their USB drive, whatever it is, and then go in there and then run or execute that file. Let's do that. So we are still in the distribution folder. I'm gonna take dir, and you see that there is actually a test folder, which is also a directory or a folder. So I'm going to go in there, and now we are inside this guy. And if I type dir again, I'm going to see a whole bunch of files, and one of them somewhere is this guy over here, this test.exe. So I'm going to run it, and it runs pretty quickly. Like, there's no longer that little bit of delay in the beginning for unpacking, because there is no unpacking required. It runs right away, and this delay is noticeable even in this little tiny program. So imagine if it were a bigger program, that delay would become even more significant. So there's nothing wrong in having a folder and then just giving up that folder. And all of these are supporting files that are needed to run this little file over here. Okay, so you finally know how to convert our Python script into, or Python project into a real executable file.